Good morning. I don't think there's enough words in the English language to talk about the impact of what I'm about to address. Repetitively, I've seen people who have a social media following or people who have some type of power within the group or even about a group who, when allegations of harm come out, they say they believe the victims of the harm, but they take action to talk about a favorable narrative about the person who has allegations of harm against them. And one that's like completely reversing the roles of victim and offender. It's creating this alternative story, and it diminishes the reality that the person lived with, the harm that they survived. Two, it's also giving lip service when that person is saying that I believe the victims of crimes potentially. I believe the victim. When you say you believe the victim, but you're constantly seeking to find a way to make it not true, because if it were true, you would have to acknowledge that people who harm others often manipulate entire communities. Full stop. And the other part of that is whenever I see that go down, no matter what group it's in, no matter what person it is, it always hits me with like, this is the same vibe as the people who sent 4 busloads of Amish people to the courtroom who got up on the witness stand and testified on behalf of the good Amish men who committed felonies against children. This is giving the same vibes as the people who wrote the stack of letters in Sins of the Amish when Tim Gaskell holds the stack of letters up and talks about that. This is giving the same vibes. Those letters were on behalf of the perpetrators of crimes. So when your words and actions don't marry up, I think there's a term for that. I'm pretty sure it's called manipulation, but I digress. I could be wrong. However, sometimes when we learn more about a person, and yes, I've had that happen, where somebody I thought I knew was arrested or was prosecuted for crimes of a felony nature against children. Sometimes we get more information about a person, and it is time for us to check our knowledge. Is it easier for people to lean into denial and continue to create content or to talk publicly and even privately, controlling the narrative into making the perpetrator of crimes or potentially a perpetrator of crimes a victim rather than engaging in actions that would actually show that you believe the victim? I'm saying that when you start operating with victim empowerment principles, one of the primary things that you should engage in is actions that tell victims of crimes and victims of harm and victims of violence that you are safe to engage with. You don't do that by cozying up to people that have done harm to them. That is not how you gain trust. That is not how you build sustainable and meaningful relationships with people who have experienced crimes or people who have experienced trauma, or I digress. You get the gist. You get to build trust. You get to choose to build trust with your platforms. And if you don't choose to do that, that's on you. But building that trust, that is how you become a safe person for people who have experienced harm. And it takes a lot of time and energy and effort and consistently showing up. It is not consistently showing up for one day for you to call out somebody like, oh, say, let's say Mark Driscoll, or even like Focus on the Family, or even like the Southern Baptist thing, but then turn around and the next day decide that this whole other person, because you knew him personally, is incapable of doing, or even if they did that, it wasn't really that bad. Or, I've never experienced that. I refer back to my earlier statement. People who harm others are manipulators. And sometimes part of that manipulation is going and gaining the trust of people who they perceive to have some position of authority in any capacity that survivors or people who are vulnerable might trust them. And they do this because it makes it easier for them to gain access to more people to harm. Not because you're way off base or, your judgment is flawed, but because they're manipulators. And because it benefits them to gain positions that they see as a little bit more powerful, because it gives them easier access to vulnerable people, because vulnerable people are less likely to speak up when they experience harm. People who are marginalized are less likely to speak up when they experience harm. It's by design, and you fell for it hook, line, and sinker. I am so disappointed in you, and maybe you can take the time to consider what you should perhaps be doing. And if you believe the person who reported this, then perhaps it might behoove you to sit back and consider how you can demonstrate that with your actions. Have a day.